Overwatch 2's latest support hero, LIFEWEAVER, was released alongside Season 4 earlier this week, and now that we've had a few days with our hands on him, it's pretty easy to say that he's got his fair share of issues. Every other hero we've seen released for Overwatch 2, Sojourn, Junker Queen, and Kiriko, may have had their share of problems, but they were at least fun and rewarding to play. LIFEWEAVER feels clunky, unrewarding, and really feels out of place with the rest of the support cast. Hi everyone, I'm Coach Tickety, and today we're going to be breaking down some of LIFEWEAVER's biggest problems and crossing our fingers and saying a quick prayer to the Blizzard devs to hope we see some changes. If you like this type of content, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know down in the comments if you could change one part of LIFEWEAVER's kit, what would it be? He's going to be released in competitive soon, so hopefully the devs are listening. And if you're looking for ways to improve your play, then you should head over to GameLeap.com. Over on our website, we have hundreds of guides made by top-level coaches with more being added every single week. So whether you're brand new to the game, trying to pick up a new hero, hopefully not LIFEWEAVER, or trying to reach the top of the leaderboards this season, then the guides on our website will help you reach your goals. So check out the link below this video or just head over to GameLeap.com and get your membership started today. Alright, let's start off with the biggest issue with LIFEWEAVER's kit in my opinion, and that's just that he feels awkward and clunky to play. And the biggest component of this is the fact that he has to swap weapons to do both healing and damage. Let's take a look at the only two other heroes in the game that have weapon swapping mechanics, Mercy and Torbjorn. Mercy only ever swaps to her pistol as a last resort defensive measure, or maybe if she's feeling spicy when she pops her Valkyrie and tries to get that kill on an enemy Widowmaker. And Torbjorn rarely ever uses his hammer unless he's actively repairing his turret or going for those montage level hammer kills in the kill feed. This trend would imply that LIFEWEAVER should only ever swap to his secondary weapon, his only form of damage, situationally, when the reality is everyone is constantly throwing damage around in a game like Overwatch 2. And while it doesn't really cost him much downtime to swap weapons, it feels needlessly awkward when heroes like Kiriko or Baptiste can easily weave damage and healing in just between primary and secondary fires. This seems like an incredibly easy fix to me. If they just put his damage on secondary fire instead of locking it behind a different weapon, this hero would feel so much more intuitive. The weapon swapping isn't the only thing that makes LIFEWEAVER feel a little bit awkward to play though. The next thing I want to talk about is the fact that he has to slow his own movement speed whenever he's charging up his healing. The charging mechanic I think is cool, and it draws a nice parallel to Symmetra, another Vishkar associate of his, but overall it ends up just making him more awkward and vulnerable to do just a core mechanic that every support hero has to do, heal your teammates. The closest parallel to this mechanic in the support line that I can think of would be Ana when she scopes in with her rifle, but she gets noticeable benefits when she chooses to limit her mobility. She gets a hit scan version of her weapon which allows her to hit precision targets at range. LIFEWEAVER is by default a little bit handicapped whenever he chooses to charge up his healing. And while you could choose to quickly tap your heals on a target as LIFEWEAVER, this will result in you running out of ammo quickly and realistically not really putting out much healing. Again, this seems like a fairly easy fix to me. Just remove that movement speed penalty entirely from a backline support hero, because it just adds to his next biggest problem in my opinion. He's too vulnerable. Not only does he slow himself, but he has the biggest hitbox for a support character in the entire game. I mean, he's even bigger than some tank characters, which is ridiculous in my opinion. And he really doesn't have anything to make up for this. The few defensive options that LIFEWEAVER does have either feel too weak or have too many situational uses to be consistent. He does have his dash, which is his only form of self-healing paired with a little bit of mobility, but this is not nearly enough to make up with just the size of his hitbox. He can't use his life grip for himself at all, other than maybe pulling an ally to your side who will hopefully help you win a duel. And his best defensive utility is using his pedal platform directly at his own feet to lift himself up into the air and hopefully away from danger. But if the danger's too close, it'll just be lifted up right beside you, so good luck if you're ever getting jumped on by a Winston or a Doomfist or anything like that. And the devs seem to be almost laughing in LIFEWEAVER's face when they designed his passive, where it gives enemy aggressors a reward if they kill him. So he's just a prime target for not only the reasons that he's easy to hit, he doesn't have many defensive options, but you get a nice little health pack every time you kill him. This just seems like overkill. I don't even know why this passive is on this hero, to be honest. It seems ridiculous, but it just makes him such a prime target to any aggressive members on the enemy team, and there's really nothing LIFEWEAVER can do about it. Now, being vulnerable is one thing. There are plenty of other DPS and support members who feel just as vulnerable as LIFEWEAVER does, but another big problem of his is that he doesn't really have any individual game plan. He does have a lot of interesting utility in his kit, but it's all really best used on an ally, which can make him interesting in a team play dynamic setting, maybe at a really high level when you're setting up set plays, but otherwise, what reasons would you have to pick LIFEWEAVER in your games? The damage from his weapon feels extremely meaningless on any targets that are outside very close range, and again, if they're that close, it's probably going to be LIFEWEAVER losing that duel instead. You could use the pedal platform to get yourself into more interesting locations, but again, you can't really do anything from those locations, and you're better off using it for your team, but then when you use it for your team, you lose your best defensive option to survive aggression, so it just feels really awkward again. And then even if you manage to charge up your ultimate as LIFEWEAVER, it doesn't feel that impactful when you drop the tree on the ground. The initial burst of healing is nice, and the fact that it can be used similar to Maywall to block off lines of sight and things like that is decent, but then the enemies can basically just ignore the ultimate or downright destroy it. After the instant 150 healing that the tree provides, it only provides 50 health every 1.75 seconds. That is laughably weak, and so much can happen in the time between pulses that will likely get someone on your team killed. And for reference to show how weak this ultimate is, just the damage from Armacha's annihilation, not even him punching or his teammates doing damage, will out DPS the healing from this tree. So it seems like the only real reason you would have to pick LIFEWEAVER, especially in a competitive setting, would be to try and synergize the strength of your utility with your teammates, at a really high level most likely. But that leads me to my next point, which is the fact that his utility even has too many potential downsides. Obviously, I'm mainly talking about his life grip here. While it is a very clutch ability, and I do like the idea of something like this being in the game, the fact that it completely removes any agency from your target, who's one of your teammates by the way, can cause so many problems. You need to sync up this ability, and unless you're really calming in voice or working with someone you know you can trust, it's going to be very hard to find those clutch moments. There's some easy use cases, sure, like saving someone who's booped off the map or is stuck by a pulse bomb. Those are easy casts, but those happen maybe once a game. And the rest of the time, whenever you're using it, it either feels like you probably could have done all right without using the ability, or it actively hinders the game plan of your teammates and causes them to mess up their timings or their positions or something like that. Or you could also just miss and hit the wrong target and end up leaving someone stranded in the enemy backline. There's definitely a lot of potential with this ability, especially in high-level coordinated settings, but without any sort of confirmation from your target before they accept the pull, or any better synchronicity with your teammates, it's tough to find real value with this ability. We've already talked about the pedal platform a little bit. You can use it as your team is rotating or setting up a defensive position to get some more interesting locations unlocked around the map, but other than that, it's going to be very tough to use this ability during an active team fight, other than again using it for yourself defensively to get yourself up into the air away from a target. Using this on reaction against enemies who are getting aggressive to try and help an ally can sometimes backfire and give your enemies the high ground advantage over you. And so using this pre-fight should be fine for rotation, stuff like that. But then again, you're not using it for much else interesting during a fight because too much can go wrong. I'm not sure how this would affect the character as a whole balance-wise, but I think it would be interesting to see what would happen if the pedal platform could only lift allies into the air. This would make it a lot more consistent to use defensively, and you wouldn't have to worry about all those situations where you accidentally lift a ulting Cassidy up into the air above your team. Sure, you might lose some counterplay potential, but realistically trying to go for those counterplays, other than on an ulting Orisa like we saw in the trailer, is very limiting and more often than not ends up backfiring. And speaking of utility backfiring, again, I have to bring up the passive. This seems like such a lazy system, and like, why does it give the enemies a health pack too? Why not just benefit your allies? That would at least make some sense, but why would any part of any hero actively benefit the enemy team? That just seems so counterintuitive to me. Alright, and next, the real reason why LIFEWEAVER has such a big problem in the current state of Overwatch 2 right now is that he's just simply weaker than every other support in the lineup. He's got worse survivability, a weaker healing output, and weaker damage and utility in most situations. Most support heroes, or most heroes in the game in general, suffer in one of these three areas anyway, but they make up for it in strengths in the other two. So let's talk about these one by one. So his survivability, again, he's got the giant hitbox, he doesn't have any real mobility, he's got weak self-sustain, and he can't use his best ability, the life grip, for himself at all. So he's just one of the least survivable supports in the game. Another support with weak survivability would be someone like Zenyatta, who of course is a very prime dive target for enemy tracers and Genjis and things like that, but he makes up for it by being a glass cannon, by having very consistent damage output, and the damage amp from his Discord applies so consistently, so he's constantly adding to his team-wide game plan. In addition to that, he also has Transcendence, one of the strongest defensive abilities in the entire game to help his team mitigate things like aggressive ultimates. When it comes to healing output, let's just talk straight numbers. Right now, LIFEWEAVER does 65 healing per second, which is decent, but it does mean you have to constantly charge up those fully charged orbs, which makes you again more vulnerable, and you do have to reload your weapon when you run out of flowers. And 65 healing per second isn't bad. It's not great, but it's not too bad. There's plenty of other supports with lower healing numbers in the game. Let's take, for example, Mercy. Her healing per second is 65 and again is single target and lock on, so it's very comparable here. However, Mercy doesn't have to worry about reload time, travel time of the projectile, she just instantly locks on, and she can't miss her target, unlike LIFEWEAVER's projectiles, which can't even be blocked by shields or eaten by defense matrix. So I would even say Mercy's healing output is even a step above LIFEWEAVER's, but she also has way stronger survivability. She can literally fly around the map. And on top of that, she's got one of the strongest utility abilities in the game with Resurrection. Our next category is that damage and utility, and you would think this is where LIFEWEAVER would shine with the power of his life grip. But again, we've talked about how these long cooldown abilities have so much misplay potential that sometimes it's not even worth using them. And alongside utility, his damage is also pretty weak. He can't really do much consistently. It also locks him out from his healing whenever he goes for it, so you're only going to be using this as a way to charge your ultimate by poking your enemies across the map, or as a last-ditch effort whenever people are too close and you've got no allies nearby. Another hero with weak damage and utility would be Moira. She's got no utility to speak of. But you know what she does have? Much stronger healing output and is much more survivable, especially with these new buffs she got to her Coalescence. And yeah, her ultimate's way better too. I would rather have Coalescence every time over LIFEWEAVER's tree. And let's just say for sake of argument that we are considering LIFEWEAVER to be a hero with strong utility and maybe even moderate damage, we'll say. I can't go any higher than that. There are other supports in the cast, specifically Baptiste and Kiriko, who have equally strong utility and are much better in the other two categories as well. They both have more meaningful damage, as in they can both actually get kills with their damage, and the healing output and survivability for both of them are miles ahead of whatever LIFEWEAVER can do. They're both doing much more consistent healing, whether or not it's single target, and their self-survivability is so much stronger with different forms of mobility and, of course, self-sustaining tools. I was initially extremely excited when I saw glimpses of LIFEWEAVER's kit in the initial trailer we got for him. But ever since that, the more that's come to light, the more it's become clear that this is straight up the worst support in the game, and arguably the worst hero in the game as a whole right now. Like I mentioned at the start of this video, every hero that's been released in Overwatch 2 so far may not have been perfect balance-wise, but at least have flowed well as heroes and felt cohesive in terms of their kit. LIFEWEAVER feels like we've just taken a giant step back in terms of hero releases, and what I'm worried about is the fact that the dev team has talked about wanting to release more support heroes to keep up with the ratio of tank and DPS and support. Obviously, we have less support heroes than everyone else. It almost feels like they're forcing support releases here without fully polishing these heroes yet. The good news is that the dev team has been more receptive to criticism and more open about communication than they have ever been in the past. This means that they are listening to this type of criticism and they are actively working on changes as the community reacts to their updates. So I'm definitely not happy with LIFEWEAVER's release at all, but I think it is a positive note to see that the dev team is being responsive, and I'm definitely hoping to see some rapid changes soon, hopefully before he even hits competitive. But that's all just my opinion, and from what I can tell online, the majority of people's opinion about LIFEWEAVER. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this hero, what you would want to see changed. If you like the videos we put out on YouTube here, if you find this stuff helpful, then the guides on our website will blow your mind. Over there, you'll find everything you need to become the best player you can be, starting with basic fundamentals and game knowledge, all the way up to in-depth step-by-step hero courses to maximize your playstyle. So what are you waiting for? Click the link below this video or go to GameLeap.com today and get your membership started right now. Anyway, that's all from me today, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.